Harrison Price for Monday, June 9th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. And this show, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres virtually alongside Blake Price, who's in Toronto calling Canadian soccer matches. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things after a tremendous weekend in the world of sports. My goodness, what a treat it was to watch some of the sporting events that were on this weekend, both locally and abroad. Blake Price, you were in Toronto seeing one of them, that Canada-Ukraine match on Saturday. I hope you got a chance to take in the rest of the weekend that was in the world of sports.
A fair amount of it. You know, we've often talked about the middle of April being, you know, one of the best times in sports, you know, early October as well, just where sort of all the streams converge upon each other. The last couple of weeks has presented with us some amazing sports memories here already. And the Stanley Cup Final has shown up with a couple of great games. Soccer abounds, the French Open stuff this week. I mean, it was startling. The golf in the last little while has been quite good too. I mean, it has been a good fortnight, I would say, of being a sports fan right now. And hey, the AHL Canucks are adding to it, even though we can't watch it as much.
And I'll say this, this could be an all-time classic Stanley Cup final. I mean, these two games, the two games in Edmonton were absolutely extraordinary. I am completely hooked now as a neutral. As a matter of fact, this has a lot of the hallmarks of the Islanders-Oilers, Blake, from way back in the 80s, which, you know, talk about some of the great Stanley Cup rivalries of all time. There's really no reason the Oilers and the Panthers should be rivals outside of the fact they are just so clearly the two best teams in hockey, having played in last year's Cup final, and they're back at it again, but I think it's even better entertainment this time around. So the hockey is extraordinary, and as you say, the soccer is heating up, and a bunch of other sports really, really keeping us entertained here in June, in the late summer. Let's get to our Pacific Toyota dealers poll question for today. We are asking you, did the Canucks make a mistake in not promoting Manny Malhotra to head coach? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Sekeres Price X and YouTube channels. Mr. Price, you get first crack.
I'm going to vote no, but just because I'm going to give Adam Foote his chance. I will admit, hey, the resume as we speak right now is probably more impressive on the Malhotra end of things. That's not always what goes into a hiring. That's not always what makes one hiring better than the other. I probably would have trusted my gut more in saying it was Malhotra over Foote. But Foote being an incumbent and having a flavor for that room, there's some logic to be had there. I'm not ready to get on this soapbox yet and say that this was an incorrect hire, so I'm going to vote no.
So I can make that case as well. And at one point thought to myself, okay, I'm inclined to make that case. Then I just started thinking about it more. You know, anybody who was around Manny Malhotra here as a player understood that he was a natural leader, that this was just a person of integrity and wisdom that even his peers went to on different matters, let alone those in his charge. I understand that Rutherford and Alvin weren't around Manny as a player and probably didn't have the same book on Manny that they did on Adam Foote. Look, he was light on head coaching experience, right? This is his first year as an AHL head coach, his first year as a head coach, period. So if you were going to bypass him and say he's not ready for an established NHL coach, a guy who has won before, so be it. I would not have batted an eyelash at that. But you bypassed him for another guy who's light on experience in Adam Foote. and probably just because of the familiarity. And as much as Quinn Hughes liked him and vouched for him, I think you also ask yourself the question, did we need a clean break from all the drama of last season? I'm not sure there was another NHL organization that would have hired Adam Foote as head coach. I'm not sure there was an NHL organization that would hire Manny Malhotra right now as a head coach. But I do think that Manny Malhotra is going to have coaching options available to him beyond the Vancouver or Abbotsford Canucks. I'm not sure I can say the same about Adam Foote. And so I voted yes.
I talked to you about this on Friday or Thursday, I think, and now with the extra win under his belt and the series victory, I think we can say it again. And I'm sure the Vancouver Canucks would not admit to this, and certainly Adam Foote wouldn't, but the leash is going to be short. I mean, it is likely amongst the cheapest coaching staffs in the entire National Hockey League. And, this is presuming if they get to October and Manny Malhotra is still head coach of the Abbotsford Canucks, which remains to be seen.
I think he will be. I mean, I understand there are some vacancies. There's the Dallas Stars head coaching vacancies. There may be some assistant vacancies, but I think the idea was to come here to be a head coach and build a head coaching resume, right?
Yeah. So let's presume that will be the case. I mean, if it's an unmitigated disaster next season, I mean, how many months of unmitigated disaster do the Vancouver Canucks have to see before they make a change? Because it's going to be really easy. The narrative's super easy, Matt. If they get off to a bad start, people are just going to say, hey, it's the old guys just doing the same thing and it's not working, right? We need a completely fresh look at this team. And that's going to be an easy claim to make if there's any struggles, deep struggles, I think, for the Canucks next season.
Yeah, and of course, Manny's not done here. Manny has at least 4 more games left, if not 7, with the Abbotsford Canucks into the Calder Cup final. We'll have more on that in a moment. First, Blake's going to tell you about the BZ4X. There's a number in there, Blake. 3
letters, 1 number. We did a deep dive on this. It is unequivocal. Also unequivocal how amazing this car is. Go take it for a test drive at your Pacific Toyota dealers. These things are normally subjective. I'm going to say this is not. This is objectively a beautiful car.
It is.
You're going to have so much room, so much fun driving it. Remember what it is to have fun driving a car? You'll get that with the BZ4X. Stay in the HOV lane for the entire existence. And, of course, it'll be a long existence. It is a Toyota, and they've been doing this electric thing for a long, long time. Up to $5,000 in rebates available. And right now the financing on the LE all-wheel drive edition, which that's BC, you can get 0.99% over 36 months. ShopToyota.ca.
Our top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Winning time. Local teams, all they do is win, win, win. Lions, Caps, Abbey Canucks, Seas, all with successful weekends. And there was even a world record set across the Georgia Strait in Victoria by a Canadian. More on that, soccer, baseball, later in the program. God, cup's overflowing here. We got to break up the show somehow. But we'll start with the Abbotsford Canucks, who are on their way to the AHL's Calder Cup final after a 4-2 victory over Texas at a jam-packed, loud, and proud
Look at the
Abbey
backdrop
Center
there. Look at the backdrop of that photo.
Oh, I know. Look at all the people in the crowd there who stuck
great.
around for the team photo to send the Western Conference champions off. Amazing work here by the Canucks farm team. The Baby Canucks win the series in 6. They will face Charlotte, the Florida affiliate, for the Calder Cup, with that series beginning Friday in North Carolina. It was a huge night for Surrey. The Sons of Surrey showing out on Sunday. Judar Kara scores the tying goal early in the 3rd period for the Abbotsford Canucks. Arshdeep Bains scores the insurance marker, his 2nd of the night. And as all of that is happening out at Abbotsford Center, Jivan Bodwal scores his 1st goal for the Whitecaps down at BC Place. Boy,
19
Surrey
years of
proud.
age for Bodwal. Yeah,
that's incredible. What a fantastic night for athletes from Surrey. Max Sasson nets the winner for the Abbey Canucks with 8 minutes left in the 3rd. Abby battles back from 2-0 down early in this hockey game after losing Friday's Game 5 down in Austin, Texas, where they had a chance to close out the series. So Game 1 Friday, first 2 in Charlotte, and then we're back here Tuesday for Game 3, not tomorrow, but a week from tomorrow, June 17th. Game 4 Thursday, June 19th. And then, if necessary, Game 5 Saturday, June 21st. They're all in Abbotsford. They do not have home ice advantage, so they will host the middle 3 games of this 2-3-2 best of 7. Blake,
and the Canucks
thoughts?
have been good at stealing road victories. So, I mean, the chances of them sweeping back at home after a split on the road would be slim, but at least you give yourself that possibility. So it'd be nice to see them get the split in some way, shape, or form, come back home, and at least preserve that little bit of drama for Canucks fans here that maybe they could actually get it done on home ice. Again, it's 5-game series are unlikely in finals, but you never know. And right now, they just seem to be playing with a little extra mojo. They're going to get enough rest here that I don't think you're saying, oh, the Checkers have that much more of an advantage because they will have had whatever it is, 10 days off in between. And in fact, you can almost start to make the argument, is it rust on the Checkers versus the right balance for the Abbotsford Canucks? So I don't mind their position, even though it took the extra game. They could have sealed it in 5. Again, they stay on their game. It doesn't sound like there was any critical injury suffered in that game. So I think it's their best foot forward here for game number 1 of the final.
Yeah, first thing we should say, this is a mighty opponent. They have swept their last 2 series. So, I mean, you're sweeping conference finals and conference semis. You're doing something right.
But you're clipping the momentum here with the big rest.
Well, that's the other thing. We talked about it last week, that you get virtually the same amount of rest if you win this Friday in Game 5 as what Charlotte has. If it would have gone the full 7, then you're probably a little down market on the rest compared to them, because you would have been traveling on the Tuesday to play the third, time zones and all of that. But wrapping it up on the Sunday, you've got some rest. It's an off day today for them. They're back at practice tomorrow. Still plenty of time to get on out to Charlotte, acclimatize to the new surroundings and the new time zone in advance of Friday's Game 1. Look, at this stage of the game, now Jonathan Lekramacky did not play this hockey game, and there was a time as we were going through the Abbotsford Canucks playoff run here, and very much noting, okay, what kind of contributions are coming from the legitimate prospects? How much of this is being done on the backs of veteran and journeyman AHL players? Really, at this stage of the proceedings, Blake, I'm not sure it matters to anyone involved with the Vancouver Canucks.
And it's been a nice mix.
Chance. Well, you've got a chance to lift a trophy. And Blake, we talked about it going into this last series, the Western Conference Final. Like, at this stage of the game, I think the series of the season of the Abbotsford Canucks stands as the absolute highlight for Canucks Sports Entertainment in season 24-25. I mean, it was such slim pickings from the National Hockey League team outside of, Kiefer Sherwood, free agent done well, and NHL hits record. But so much went wrong with the big club, with the parent club, that I think now you have to look at it and say that this club and what they've done in the AHL postseason is the apple in the Enterprise's eye.
Yeah, the only thing that was close would have been if Quinn Hughes stayed healthy and I was able to consummate another Norris at least nomination. At least a real chance to win. And I don't think he's got a real chance to win anymore. But as far as what actually got consummated, this is an actual tangible thing that they have done, that they've accomplished, and they've had contributions from up and down the lineup from people of all ages, now I don't think you're right. I don't think anybody cares who's winning games, and as long as they bring home some hardware.
Super happy for our Steep Baines. We had discussed him earlier in this postseason where, Yeah, he eventually got to the point where he was chipping in assists, but he had gone 16 games without a goal, and we were sitting there going, he was your AHL All-Star from last year, the best player on the team. He's got to get going. Well, 2 goals last night. He's got goals in consecutive games now. Seems like he has gotten off the schneid and is a big, big contributor here. And we should also shout out Artur Shilovs, who winds up being the 3rd star of this game, making 23 saves on 25 shots. He began this postseason. We were wondering, okay, he is tentatively the number 3 goaltender in the organization, but they had called Nikita Tolopilo up to make a couple of NHL starts. His position was very much, I think, under threat here, and he has done nothing other than secure his standing as the organizational's 3rd goalie with yet another series win here. So well done from Artur Shilovs. Well done from Arshdeep Bains. Kudryavtsev gets on the score sheet last night with an assist. We mentioned Max Sasson, Sammy Blais back off of scratching. He gets on the score sheet as well. So plenty of good things happening for this Abbotsford Canucks team going into the final. Buy more time for Aatu Räty to maybe get healthy and come back in the lineup and affect the proceedings. And Danila Klimovich was on the team again last night, Blake, after scoring that big game winner earlier in the series, and he tied for the team lead with 5 shots on goal. That's another good sign because Danila, he's a shooter.
And they didn't need Linus Karlsson last night, which is good because they have leaned so heavily on the production of Linus Karlsson. And while you want him to be on the box score every single game, it's nice that when he isn't, it doesn't mean a loss for the Abbotsford Canucks. It means that everybody else can chip in too. So very nice. The High Five Hazy IPA from Yellow Dog, it's a crowd pleaser. It's one they've had from day one. So why not double the pleasure? The High 10. It exists. It is a thing. It's like the holy grail of IPAs. It's the double hazy IPA High 10. Why stop at High 5 when you can go higher? It goes to 11. It goes to 10. Our classic, bright, fresh, vibrant favorite is been turned up a notch for bigger flavor. It's a beer made for those who go, they go all in. And if you want, if you like the High 5, give the High 10.
I had a High 5 this weekend, and sports turned it up to 11 on my television as the weekend went along. As we turn to football, the Lions beat the Elks 31-14 in their home and season opener Saturday at BC Place before 52-837. We will get to the game itself later in the program when head coach Buck Pierce joins us. But for a 4th straight year, the opening concert is a hit as Snoop Dogg entertains, even throws footballs into the crowd. He's got a pretty good arm, huh? We all saw that arm, huh? Reach the upper deck. Told you it's Snoop Youth Football League. Like, he has been involved in this sport for a long, long time. So love the fit. Seemingly a great time was had at the concert. Now to the matters at hand. So either the concert was delayed or the Lions just said the concert started earlier, knowing it would be a little later, for what is now becoming a real problem at BC Place, and that is getting those big crowds into the facility in a quick and orderly manner. Fans complaining of long waits, of lines not moving as BC Place is trying to administer 52,000 plus into the facility. This isn't the first time this has happened. We had heard about this either for the Messi or Miami games, Grey Cup. The messaging here locally is always leave yourself plenty of time, get in there early. But really, Blake, there are dozens of stadiums across this continent and across this world that administer crowds of this size and larger, a little more tidily than BC Place. I have been a longtime supporter of the stadium itself. I know operationally it's had its challenges. I know that you can talk to the tenants and off the record and get them to complain about different things BC Place does operationally under the stewardship of Pavco. But I've always felt that the facility itself, the size of the grandstands, the ability to get that many people in there, the fact that it can be closed or opened. Like, I am still one of the guys that argues I think it's a good home for both the BC Lions and Vancouver Whitecaps FC. But when you see things like this, boy, if we can't get our act together and get these crowds into the facility better than what we have been doing, I mean, it's a little bit of nose despite your face here with BC Place.
Yeah, I mean,
Lions put out a tweet incidentally saying, at one point saying, hang tight, fans. We're doing our utmost to get you in, which, yeah, if you're in line, hang tight. Snoop hits the stage at 6:15 and all gates are open. You'll be in time to catch the show. Let's go. But, the tenants should not be having to put those tweets out, Blake.
I'm of a million minds here because I did see a lot of contradictory tweets about people saying it took me 2 minutes to get in. Terry Fox Plaza, a complete and utter disaster because that's the obvious entry point. And I saw other people saying, no, I went around all the other gates there and they were busy. And I'm sure the other gates were busy, but they might have been processing people at a better pace. I wasn't there, so I can't speak firsthand on exactly what that looked like. But apparently there were other gates where you were able to get in rather quickly. It's just that Terry Fox Plaza is just such an attractive place to be, and yet everybody gets mired in.
Especially with the party there. And look, I'd gone to the last 3 years and didn't experience that big of a problem getting in. But also, if you have shorter lineups and you have massive lineups at Terry Fox, then you need to get your people out on the plaza and directing them to other gates and saying, look, the lines are going to be shorter there.
What have you.
Yeah. Whatever the case may be.
The problem is of course the no bag rules are still a relatively new thing in sports, and people are getting used to that. And you got to check your bag, and that's too close to the stadium. What they're going to have to learn for these big events at BC Place Stadium is things like the bike check, bag check. Get those away from the front door. So people are getting rid of that. You don't have people lining up for that mixed in with the people that are trying to get in. So I've seen that times before. I don't know. Maybe you could speak. They were planning on having a direct access from the casino, the Park Casino, directly into BC Place Stadium. I don't think that's open just yet, and I wonder if that can be expedited and that can be made, as another advertisement to get people into the stadium just a little bit quicker. But the big learning from all this stuff is, man, they've got to get their shit together. The World Cup is here next year.
Well, that's it.
And there's going to be so many more people because there's going to be people that are going to the games. They're going to be there, and there's going to be people that just want to be around the vibes as well. Right. So there's just going to be that many more. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, and the other thing is you may have to be communicating with people who aren't perfectly fluent in English for those games as well, right? Yeah. So anyways, yes, we will keep our eyes on all of that. Look, I don't suspect the Lions are going to have another crowd of 50,000 plus, so you're getting a little short in the day in terms of having dress rehearsals for that FIFA World Cup, although Blake, I don't know, maybe FIFA, I know Super Bowls, NFL, basically take over. No, we're doing stadium operations. I don't know if FIFA
does do
is going to have that heavy hand as well and make sure that it's not left to the existing stadium infrastructure. A couple other things I want to get to with this game or with this promotion. Number one, the end game. And number two, the Exodus. So, full disclosure, this was the first of the four that I had not attended in person. I took this one in at home. And Omar Doman is financing this on the premise that exposing people to the live product will convert some of those ticket buyers who mostly came for the concert and hopefully turn them into BC Lions and CFL fans, or at least have them come back to the stadium for a standalone BC Lions game. And given the fact that he's bucked up for 4 big acts in yearly succession here, I imagine that he is either A, seeing return on this promotion, or is giving it quite a long leash. How much longer is this going to go on? Is Amar going to do this every season, or are we getting close to curtains? Because it's going to be quite a bummer when this thing goes away, right? If it ever goes away. It's turned into one of the big events on the Vancouver summer calendar, and you know how this town loves an event. So I did find myself wondering about that. And then second is the Exodus. And again, this was the first time that I experienced it on television. My recollection is that the crowd for One Republic in 2022 stayed till halftime. Now, the crowd for One Republic in 2022 was quite a bit different to my eye than the crowds of the subsequent 2 years with the 2 rap acts, LL Cool J, 50 Cent, and I imagine the Snoop crowd may have been similar. I found that there were far more women, and especially far more young women, at the One Republic show in 2022 than I was ever accustomed to seeing at BC Place at a Lions game. And I don't know if this was me watching it on television as opposed to being in the stadium. I felt like the One Republic crowd stuck around through halftime or till halftime. I felt that we saw more bleed of the crowd leaving LL Cool J and 50 Cent in the first half the last couple of years. But it looks like it's happening in the second quarter now, Blake. Like the crowd looks far less by the middle and the end of the second quarter than it does at the beginning of the game, obviously, when we're fresh off the concert. So, answer me this. How concerned should they be? Because the idea is to keep these fans around, expose them to great football, and sure enough, they'll come back. Again, another year here where we didn't exactly have an explosive first half.
That's the problem.
Coming after the concert. Is that the problem as you see it? That it was just kind of not much was happening first half of football combined with some of the entry problems that just had people chalking it up and saying, okay, that's it. I'm off into the beautiful Vancouver day.
Maybe it's the wrong phrase to say that's the problem. That was unfortunate that it rolled. I mean, sports fans know you stick around for all four quarters because a great second half can certainly redeem a lackluster first half. And it wasn't even a terrible first half.
Yeah, CFL known for its great finishes as well, right?
Right. So it was just unfortunate that it rolled out the way that it did. The only solution I can see to this problem, and it's going to shorten the concert, is that you make it a halftime show and you collaborate with TSN and the league, and you say, "Listen, we need a 35-minute halftime, and we're going to do a 25-minute concert." And that means a longer concert than a Super Bowl halftime, which is usually 15, something like that, 15, 20 minutes.
No, it's longer than that.
Is it? I think it's 25. Yeah. So you go to 25 for the concert, 30 to 35 for the overall break, and say, I know it's unconventional, but it's good for the league. Yada yada yada. Will you get as many tickets sold for a shorter concert? Maybe not, but I still think you'll get a very healthy attendance, and then you got those people until halftime at the very least. So maybe that's the best case scenario. The danger of doing it post game, and I've thought about that. Okay, you do an earlier kickoff, you do a post game concert, is that there's a real bummer from the football fans that you get blown out 40-20, and are they sticking around to watch their concert? I don't know if the answer is there either.
One of the things that I saw a lot of on social is it turns into a very long day. Especially if you're spending 30 to 45 minutes getting in the stadium, as some people reported, then the concert, then a football game. Let's remember, football is now tracking as the longest game going, right? Baseball's gone to the clock, and it's really shortened their games. Football, you're there for 3+ hours. And yes, there have been a couple of these games where the first half was just nothing to write home about, and I do wonder how much that has had an effect on people. I also wonder whether there are just some differences in the crowd that these acts attract, and whether or not they are copacetic with football, whether there's people you'd think Snoop, with all his history with the sport of football, would have football fans amongst his crowd, but he's a huge act with a very diverse.
But it's sort of a retro novelty now for him. Like, it's a younger fan base, so they might not be diehard CFL fans being as young as they might be. I don't know.
And the one thing, Amar told us this last week, and look, they're very proud of the fact this is a pregame concert. I remember Amar making a big deal of that when this promotion was first started 3 years ago. But Amar told us last week that, look, this booking now has some traction with acts, right? Like, first of all, they must pay pretty handsomely. You're playing before 50,000 people, and let's face it, there's a lot of acts for whom you're not playing before 50,000 people all that often, if ever. Not to mention, you get a fair bit of national television exposure, right, on TSN. I mean, it's certainly not a Super Bowl-sized audience or anything close to that, but you're still beaming out to a good number of people, given that the ratings for CFL games are relatively strong.
Here, Matt, how about this?
The other thing I wonder about the Exodus is this was a 7 p.m. start, Blake. Some of the others have been earlier in the day, and I do wonder whether that had an effect as well.
That would help. But here's the other thing, and I don't know how many acts would agree to do this because it's a longer day for them. How many acts would agree to a 20-minute opening set before the game, and then a halftime set as well? Do you placate everybody there?
Yeah.
Then you're getting your bang for your buck musically, and you keep people around. But again, then you're asking the celebrity to be there for 2 hours. That's not usually the thing.
Blake, 50 Cent was in that limo on his way back to the airport in short order. I'm not sure about the others. Anyways, look, it is achieving getting a big crowd to BC Place for the Lions home opener. It is achieved becoming a event on the late spring, summer calendar for Vancouver and beyond just sports fans as well. It is a hell of a give back from this ownership group to Vancouver and to BC Lions ticket holders to put this act on and, of course, price it as affordably as it is priced, because it's basically buy a football ticket and get the concert for free. So all of that is working splendidly. We got to get people into BC Place sooner and more tidily, and we got to keep people in BC Place after the act is done. Though that is what I perceive as the challenges with this going forward.
The big problem, though, with asking them to go get there earlier is that prolongs the day. So then you're back to that problem. You just need to get people in there.
Well, no, you're either in line or you're in the stadium. I think people are happier if at least they're in the stadium getting a refreshment,
guess,
right?
But just process them quicker.
It's still a long day. No, for sure. Yeah, for sure. It is still a long day. I mean, there's no way around that, right? If you're going to put on a 45-minute concert and then a break to get the game ready and then a 3.5 hour football game, that's
a long day.
With travel time, that is a long day. No, I get that part of it. Anyways, in terms of endgame, I hope this keeps on keeping on. I hope Amar is seeing a return on his investment here. Because, I mean, if this thing ever goes away, that'll be a heck of a bummer, right? To just go back to a regular CFL and home opener for the Lions.
And hey, the CFL is a business. Amar Doman's a businessman. If it makes him money, no matter what it looks like in the stands in the fourth quarter, CFL teams need to make money. So you got to
For sure. And the BC Lions are trying something here. And look, we heard a little bit about this as maybe a best practice that could be sold in other CFL markets as well. We'll see. Maybe there's still occasion for, especially one of the bigger markets, Toronto or Montreal, to be able to pull this. To pull this at 21,000 at the Alouettes home opener, which is good, but the Argos, as we all know, can use some help. Stanley Cup Final Game 3 tonight from Florida, with the series tied 1-1, and just some of the best damn hockey we have seen in some years. What an extraordinary game too, with the late tying goal. And I got to say, I will be mayor of Wrongville on Corey Perry. I thought he was absolutely washed after that Chicago episode, whatever happened, that got him thrown off the Blackhawks. I did not think I would see effective hockey from Corey Perry from that point forward. But here we are. The stars are shining out with McDavid and with Draisaitl. Brad Marchand finds a way to continue to score huge playoff goals. You have the Sam Bennett storyline in full thrust. This and the television audience was very big, Blake, particularly in Canada, for these games. I'm not sure, as we said last week, I don't typically believe in the Canada's team thing. I think you've got a little bit more of that this year than in some years because of Connor McDavid and because of the fact that Connor McDavid has now delivered a trophy for Canada wearing the red maple leaf. But you're talking 4 or 5 million people now in Canada are watching these early games, and one can only imagine what this television audience is going to be if it gets to a Game 6.
I don't think it's Canada's team, though, Matt. I think it's just
I don't think so.
I think the word is out that everybody just knows that this is a absolute. There's no David and Goliath. This is Goliath and Goliath, and they are slugging away, and they're scoring goals too. Like, it's not a grind them out 1-0, score line here. They're scoring. They're battling. And you're right. The best players are the best players. Like, not so much with Florida, actually. There's room for improvement by Florida's top line, certainly. But I mean, it's just great theater, and the places are packed. Credit to the Sunrise crowd, and they're supporting a winner. It's a lot easier to do that, but at least it is there, and there's good vibes. At least on TV for the Sunrise games as well. So, no, I mean, I can't remember honestly, and I mean this fully. I don't remember having such appointment viewing.
Yes,
for a non-Canucks game in our market, people talking about where are we watching the game tonight? Like, I've never seen it like this for a non-Canuck affair. It's pretty big.
Yeah, no, it is one that is absolutely appealing to the neutrals in a way that very few Stanley Cup finals recently have appealed to the neutrals. And I mean, I think it all gets thrown into the cocktail there, right? Like, there are a lot of good. There are a lot of tasty component parts to the Stanley Cup final, so looking forward to tonight's game. The other thing I'll say is the face-off times work too, right? 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. Yep. I mean, we're experiencing some beautiful, beautiful days here in Vancouver. And in previous Stanley Cup finals, I have found myself going, oh, man, do I want to go inside now to my hot apartment and watch this game or be somewhere out in our community in the sunshine? I find myself, as you say, appointment. Okay, it's 5 o'clock. Let's get to that Oilers-Panthers Stanley Cup final game. Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta. Greta, a fantastic spot to watch the game or have a gathering. That's right. If you're looking for a spot for an upcoming party or team-building event, summer sociable, check out Greta. Great street food, a fantastic arcade that encircles the bar, centrally located right downtown. For more info to book your event, go to gretabar.com. Greta Bar, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We will talk to Darren Dreger here, NHL Insider, about, well, what we anticipate is going to be an extremely busy and fun month of player transactions. Salary cap space has opened up. There are a lot of significant names out there on the trade block. And so we talked to Dreger about what the Vancouver Canucks could possibly do, what he's hearing on the Canucks, players like Pettersson, Demko, not to mention interest in players from other teams as they search for that second-line center. Buck Pierce, head coach, British Columbia Lions. Of course, once upon a time quarterback, British Columbia Lions. His first win as a CFL head coach, first win for new general manager Ryan Rigmaiden in that post as well. We have a conversation with Buck about the game itself. And hey, should mention that was a very nice debut for Nathan Rourke, Blake. 324 yards and 3 touchdowns. Really took command in the second half. That was the Nathan Rourke that we saw in CFL circa 1.0 as opposed to the guy we saw last season. So a very successful start for the Lions at the gate and on the field. We'll talk to Buck about that. And then so much to discuss later in the program with the Whitecaps getting another resounding victory. I mean, you throw this club any kind of adversity and they just gobble it up and say, don't care, go out and play their game. But a huge night for the Whitecaps at BC Place last night. Huge night, of course, for the local guy, Badwell. We'll hear from him. RBC Canadian Open was this week. You had Summer McIntosh, and is there a bigger Canadian star athlete internationally right now than Summer McIntosh? She's in province setting records. Epic tennis on Sunday morning. So much happening in the world of sports, and we'll get to it.
Yeah, we want to talk to Vancouver Canucks in a second here, so we're going to get to that quickly, but we are going to spend a lot of time on all that stuff because it was a crazy weekend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You said you had something Canucks you were going to talk about?
No, I'm saying coming up with Darren Dreger.
Oh, with Dreger. Yeah, yes, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah.
I thought I missed something from our menu there, Mike. I was like, is Blake ahead of me here? Let's get to today's Bet365 bets of the day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. Blake has no chance of remembering what he bet on for Friday, so I will just go first here. They've set a high total for tonight's game, and perhaps influenced by all the amazing offensive play and offensive players in Friday's game 2. 6.5 combined goals for the Oilers and Panthers tonight in game 3, higher than the typical 5.5. But you know what? I'll bite some extra value on the bet, if not the total. I'm going over 6.5. Entertain me, Edmonton and Florida. You have through 2. And that pays at plus 105.
It was a Barkov goal. So, no. I remembered my bet, and I did not pay out, unfortunately. But we talked about
gloating on a losing bet.
Yes.
Can one gloat on a losing bet? I'm
gloating about my brain, I guess. The stars have certainly shone for the Oilers. The points are there for McDavid and Draisaitl. You're going to have to lay down reams to get any payout from McDavid. But
yes,
2 points for Leon Draisaitl is actually on the right side of the ledger, so I'll take that.
Very
2
doable.
Points from Leon Draisaitl is plus 128. That sounds pretty reasonable. I'll take it.
All right. Want to get in on the action for the Stanley Cup playoffs? At Bet365, they got you. Game props, player props, totals, money line. You can even bet future Stanley Cup champion Conn Smythe, whatever your bet. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, an official partner of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Must be 19 or older. Darren Dreger coming up next. So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. This next interview brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now open for 2025 and accepting tee times for the entirety of the season. Get them locked in online. Of course, follow on social at Whistler Golf. You'll see all the bear activity up there. And if you have a group of 12 or more, you can play midweek. Ask them about the Harrison Price midweek special. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Groups of 12 or more. Al Chris Manson, the fine team up there, going to take fantastic care of you. Go to whistlergolf.com/groups. And here he is, TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Rain Dregs podcast, Mr. Darren Dreger. Back with Harrison Price. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Enjoying the battle that is the Stanley Cup final between the Oilers and the Florida Panthers. And, I was going to use the word hoping. That might be a little strong. Anticipating is probably more to the point that this is going to be a 7-game series yet again. And if it does, then I'd feel less confident of betting heavily on the Florida Panthers, with all due respect to the defending Stanley Cup champs, because at least from where I'm sitting, it looks like there's a level of maturity that we're seeing now in the Oilers game, and not just from their 2 top stars in Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So far, through a couple of games, it's been a fun series.
I was speaking with a friend on Friday saying, boy, if you missed Oilers Islanders back in the 80s, you're getting a redux here. The 2 best teams, both with championship medal, right? Or at least one trying to finally get championship medal.
Well, and Dregs,
the 2 best teams in hockey, and they're playing to it as well. An incredible first couple of games here.
The objective third-party fans, like I'm not going to subscribe to the Canadian, groundswell here, but I think people are interested at the very least, which is great to see. Like whether you are cheering for or against the Oilers, I think everybody's watching the Stanley Cup final. It feels like.
I think so, and it doesn't hurt when you've got an 8:00 Eastern, 8:15, 8:20 start, right? Because you can engage the country coast to coast, and I think to that degree, it does matter. People are willing to invest a little bit more heavily, but also is the superstar factor, and McDavid does something at least once, twice, maybe 5 times a game where you just sit and let's rewind and have another look at that. Now, it doesn't always end up in the back of the net. It did the other night, in game 2, where he went around a couple of Panthers players, including Sasha Barkov, who's noted as being arguably one of, if not the best defensive forward in the game. And then he slides it over to Leon Draisaitl. I mean, you can be a fringe hockey fan, but appreciate the spectacle and the execution of that play.
Yeah, and Draisaitl vouched that you can't teach that. But there's
No.
no subscribing of that's him and only him.
Yeah.
No. This has all-time classic written all over it. 2 games in, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. Okay, on to your bread and butter, player transactions. We know that's why we bring Darren on, right? 3 weeks here and counting till Elias Pettersson no move clause kicks in. What are you hearing on number 40?
Not a ton, but as you would expect, and I think we predicted this, towards the end of the season, certainly after the trade deadline, given everything that has gone into Elias Pettersson and the speculation and leading up to the trade deadline, leading up to the departure of Rick Tocchet as head coach, you don't just park that stuff and it goes away. So any team that would have even veiled or modest interest, I think is circling back and having conversation with Patrick Allvin. Now, I don't have a strong indication as what direction the Vancouver Canucks are going to go there. I mean, if you're willing to make a move like that, you better be getting centerman coming back the other way, because we know that's a strong area of need for the Vancouver Canucks. I feel like, before Colorado made the decision to extend Brock Nelson, which was curious. I think that one caught most of us by surprise. And yeah, it's a 3-year extension, so you're not locking in with Brock Nelson for life. But he didn't seem to be a picture-perfect fit in Colorado, right? And so I think that a lot of us just believed he'd go to market and maybe he'd end up in Minnesota, and then he extends with the Avalanche for 3 more years. And I think prior to that, the executive of the Canucks were going around the league and just visiting conversations, visiting ideas. And I think that there was communication with the Vancouver Canucks, or those who would know Elias Pettersson pretty well. So again, I don't want to blow this out of proportion and say, here we go again with Pettersson and the Vancouver Canucks. And I would suggest that those type of conversations aren't unusual in the offseason this time of year with basically every club that isn't involved in the Stanley Cup final.
Although it's interesting, Toronto's got to revamp probably because of need if Marner does indeed leave. But it sounds like the good teams in the West might make changes for the sake of making changes and feeling like they need to mix it up. I'm thinking Dallas. Yeah. I'm thinking Colorado maybe, and Vegas Golden Knights, like teams that could run it back theoretically if they wanted to, pretty much bring back what they've got. But it seems like there's murmurs around all of these good teams that might want to make changes and find a better mix than what they've got.
I agree with that. And let's throw Winnipeg into that mix too, right? There won't be wholesale changes with Winnipeg Jets. It may happen naturally with Nikolai Ehlers if he goes to the market, and some believe that he probably will go to the market. All right, well, now they're shopping yet again. And, we have connected Jonathan Toews to the Winnipeg Jets, potentially the Toronto Maple Leafs, potentially the Colorado Avalanche, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Winnipeg would love to throw Jonathan Toews into the equation there, be it a number 3, maybe a number 2 if he's good and strong and healthy and is ready to fly. But you're right with Vegas and Dallas. Vegas is always a must-watch organization because that team, the resources they have, the support they have from Bill Foley, the owner of the Vegas Golden Knights, is there because he wants to win the Stanley Cup and expects to win the Stanley Cup every single year. I mean, it's wildly unrealistic, but that's the messaging, the commitment from ownership through management and into the players. So it didn't work out for Vegas. Okay, well, there's some good players that are going to pop onto the market here, Mitch Marner being one. I still believe that Sam Bennett likely stays in Florida. I describe him, Ken Hitchcock used to use this phrase, head of the snake, right? And it wasn't the most offensively gifted player always, or the best player. It was the best overall player. The guy that drags you into the fight and finds a way to be impactful. Well, that's Sam Bennett for the Florida Panthers. So I do think that Florida is going to put something on the table that entices Bennett. We'll see if that's true to form. So what does Vegas do? The Marner rumors have been there pre-trade deadline, right? Now Mitch is going to have a say in that, no different than he did in season with that no move clause. Now, if he goes to unrestricted free agency, he's going to pick and choose. But many think that Vegas would be a good fit for Marner. So Kelly McCrimmon is going to have to create some space to make that a reality. And we just saw the Dallas Stars fire Pete DeBoer with 1 year remaining on his contract. There's Jason Robertson speculation out there, right? So undoubtedly they feel like it's not just coaching here. Our roster, especially with some of our aging players, need some attention. So the potential for some significant moves in the West is there. Absolutely.
The Canucks helped out Vegas once before with Nate Schmidt. That helped get Alex Pietrangelo into Vegas. Could they do it again? And it's rare in division, but could they be helped out by a guy like William Karlsson, who has a couple years left, has the right cap hit for the Canucks for a second line center, and he's pushing it to be still a second line center, but his production is still there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd have to consider it if that's a legit option for the Vancouver Canucks. Keep in mind, again, let's go back pre-trade deadline. And I think that Alvin and Jimmy Rutherford talked about this after the deadline, in that the market wasn't very strong for second line centers. It wasn't, right? And I know others have reported and speculated on this. The Canucks were pretty close on Josh Norris with the Ottawa Senators at the time. And it would have been Philip Hedl, and it would have been a draft pick that would have gone way of the Ottawa Senators. And I don't know why that came unglued. I know that at the time, that was a player that Rick Tocchet really liked. Fit the system, the style of play, can skate, all of those things. So, I think that you have to be open to opportunities like that. And if William Karlsson is on the bingo card, and he probably would be if Vegas is willing to part with him, he'd probably be on the card of a lot of teams around the NHL, because there are a lot of teams that are in the market for centers, including, of course, the Vancouver Canucks, who have a pretty significant hunger for that position.
There's a lot of ways the Thatcher Demko file can go for Vancouver Dregs. Either he's back playing out his final year, he's back on an extension, or he's getting moved. What are you hearing on Demko?
Well, a little bit of all of the above, Matt. And it's quiet right now, but that doesn't mean that there isn't dialogue and communication between the Canucks and the camp that represents Thatcher Demko. Look, I mean, the NHL Combine was in Buffalo last week. I got to believe that there was communication between the agents and Alvin and the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, that's just common ground. You try and get as much work done. I call, and I'm not taking credit for it. I stole it from somebody. I just can't credit that person because I don't remember who told me, but they refer to the Combine in Buffalo as Tamper Fest. Because you've got all of the player agents there, right? And it's not just about the top prospects showing what they can show going into the draft. Come on. I mean, the agents are having conversations about contracts that they're trying to extend with a club. And then, oh, by the way, you also represent player X. What do you think? Is there a fit? That sort of stuff. So I got to believe that there was communication in terms of the extension of Thatcher. But I don't get the sense, without digging too deep, that they're close on anything. And Matt, I think that you laid out the options. I mean, it's basically an extension, whatever the term is. Or if you can't get to a place where the term makes sense, then there's a trade market for him for sure.
The question would be, do the Canucks at all feel comfortable with a long-term extension on this player, given the injury history? And conversely, like, how does the agent realistically think that the team would be okay with a 7-year deal? Given, do they just think that the team doesn't see that? I'm struggling with that.
No, you're not wrong, but you're looking at it through the lens of the Vancouver Canucks, right? And I respect, I appreciate that, because I would think the same way. Thatcher is noted as being a workhorse, right? Off ice especially. So if you've done your due diligence as a team with trade interests, how you're able to do that. I mean, if you're engaged in trade discussion with Vancouver, then perhaps you can get permission, or they'll send over the medical evidence and you go from there. But if you're good with him being healthy again, then maybe you're not so worried about it. Maybe like the team that's trying to make that trade fit. And maybe you believe that, no, he's healthy. And when healthy, he is on the cusp, if not right there, with the elite goaltenders in the National Hockey League. And there's a bit of a gamble in all of this. So if I were a team that needed an upgrade in goal, that would be how I'd train my brain to think if Demko was actually in play. But if you're the Vancouver Canucks, and you've had a front row seat and you know everything there is to know about Demko, then yeah, you're right, Blake. You're right. I mean, you're probably looking at a 3, 4, 5-year term, something along those lines, but they're just not there yet. And what I am told, not a lot from either side, but what I am told is it's an amicable conversation. So let's see how it plays out. But the old tire is going to hit the pavement here pretty quick because you've got the draft looming and then free agency around the corner.
Speaking of the tire and the pavement, Cranbrook's Bo Byram of the Buffalo Sabres might be the player with the most activity around him right now. Dregs, who are the suitors, or the Canucks won?
Yeah, I don't know that they are. I'd be surprised if they're not, even though when I look at that Vancouver blue line, it's pretty good, and it's showing promise of getting a lot better with some of the developing players that they've acquired. I can appreciate where Bo Byram is sitting right now, right? Because he's looking at Rasmus Dahlin, he's looking at Owen Power, and he's like, hey, I'm a power play guy. I'm a top pairing defenseman, and I don't have a path to be that here in Buffalo. Now, interesting to note that there was an agent change not that long ago. So he moved away from Kevin Epp and he went to Darren Ferris. Ferris represents Mitch Marner and Sam Bennett and a slew of other guys. But Ferris, we call him the Ferris wheel because there's always something going on. There's always something spinning. But he's noted for taking his better players to free agency. Byram is 2 years away from unrestricted free agency. So if you're Buffalo, do you really want that gun to your head? You know, do you just say, okay, well, we'll give you 1 year and, okay, well, he's got arb rights, so that's going to be a problem. Well, you don't know, we'll give you 2 years and you can walk into free agency. No. And Bo Byram's trade value it's top notch right now. It is. So it feels like he is going to be traded this offseason, but I haven't got a hard list yet. And I hear that Buffalo wants a right shot defenseman back as part of a package. And I'm not saying that that's exclusive. You know, let's see how, the offers kind of start to manifest around Kevin Adams and Bo Byram. But that's what I was told this morning by a team in the East.
And it's greedy to ask for Norris in there as well, having just been acquired.
Well, it depends what's coming back. If Quinn Hughes is part of the equation, then I guess maybe not.
Hey, can we interest you in a Pettersson? What do you think? Marco Rossi, Dregs. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, just more speculation, right? We just talked about Buffalo, and Peterka's name is out there. Rossi is interesting because there's tremendous upside in this young man, and he's shown that with the Minnesota Wild. Has it been consistent? I mean, you can make an argument one way or the other. The cap is going up. Bill Guerin knows that he's got money to spend now because his cap has been cleaned up. But he also has Kirill Kaprizov, who is going to get a mega deal because he's earned it. So if you don't land the pieces that you're hoping to that are going to put you in a better position, how do you acquire those guys? Right. And the free agent pool, as you guys know, isn't very deep when you get beyond the top end talent. So you've got to be able to part with something decent. And Billy Guerin is the guy that constantly reminds us publicly, and he learned this from Rutherford. You want to make a good trade, you make a fair trade. And you make sure that the team that you're dealing with is getting good value going back. You make sure that both managers feel good about themselves when that trade has been completed. And Billy Guerin, for the most part, lives by that motto. He does. And you can see it in the pieces that he's brought in. Marco Rossi is a hell of a hockey player. He is. So I don't know for certainty that he's going to get traded, but with all the speculation and a name like that and the young talent, the promise that comes along with him, I can't imagine that teams aren't calling fairly regularly.
The one thing I'm seeing, though, Dregs, in the discussion online about Rossi, that he's instigated at the very least, and you could speak to it across the league here a little bit, the size bias seems to be returning. And even the analytics folk who have long said, hey, if you produce the stats, you produce the stats. And he is a bit of a stats darling, Rossi is. Like, he looks so good 5-on-5. Right. And yet there seems to be this concern because you look at Stanley Cup rosters right now, the guys that are making it to the Final Four, the teams that make it to the Stanley Cup Final, they are big. And is that going to scare away some of the suitors for Rossi?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, Blake, because Ray Ferraro and I had this conversation, not specific to Marco Rossi, just to be clear.
Yeah.
It was more about the Dallas Stars. And I'll let Ray explain his thinking, but he noticed, that they had more smallish players up front in Dallas than the bigger guys. And you wonder how much of that is a factor. I mean, so many general managers on the back end, they want the big guys. They want the big trees, as they like to call them, right? Cover a lot of ice. They can move the bodies in front. So I don't know. At the end of the day, for me, can he skate? What's the hockey sense? And so far in his NHL career, what has the level of productivity been? And for me, it's been pretty decent. It's been pretty good. And it also depends on who you're playing with. And Rossi, when he's clicking, plays with good players in Minnesota. So, we'll see where that all plays out. But he's a name. Again, I'm always intrigued and lured by young players that are being speculated on, and you don't get straight answers from the club. Why is that player being put out there? Unless you're looking for something very specific and you don't like what you see in terms of what the free agent market is.
Dregs, you've mentioned it already here. Blake and I have done the exercise. You have all these teams looking for second line centers. I'm sure you can play the same game with right shot defensemen, and yet who are the sellers? You look at the league right now, Dregs, like even the teams that have been down and out on their luck, Anaheim, Philadelphia, they're looking to get better now. Obviously, Buffalo's trying to snap their drought. Even San Jose and Chicago are probably a little sick of losing here. So it's harder and harder to identify teams that might be looking at selling or retooling, which brings me to, the two candidates that we've wondered about. And with either new managers or a new coach there, what's the plan in Boston? What's the plan with the New York Islanders this summer?
Oh, would I love to have been a fly on the wall for the first conversation, like a real meaty conversation between Patrick Roy and Matthew Darche, the new general manager for the Islanders. Now they've got a long history. They know each other well. Darche probably, I assume, just idolized Patrick Roy back in the day as Matthew Darche was growing up as a Habs fan and making his way and all of that. But my understanding is that Patrick Roy's vision and his feelings around the roster of the New York Islanders was not the same as Lou Lamoriello's. It just wasn't. Patrick looks at this team and goes, okay, well, we need to change this. There's a lot of change that's expected and required. Does Matthew Darche feel the same way? And, what is that dynamic going to look like? Boston is an interesting spot for a lot of different reasons. They've got some good defense in Boston, as we've seen. They've got some up-and-comers, some young guys that are developing. But I just don't see Boston cutting bait on any pieces. I don't think they can afford to. That's a team that feels like they should be, at the very least, a playoff contender every single year. So, not being part of it this year, that leaves a mark. Don Sweeney got his extension. He's hired his coach. I don't think anybody was shocked by Marco Sturm getting the head coaching job in Boston. But when you look at that organization top to bottom, it's pretty thin. It's pretty thin, especially at the middle of the ice. So if there's a way that Sweeney can acquire a good center, a top pairing center, top two, then maybe he parts with one of his defense. But I think that's a precarious spot for Sweeney and the Boston Bruins to be. But I can understand why they would consider it. Again, without mentioning names of the defensemen we're talking about here. You can go on the Boston Bruins website and look at their roster dating all the way back and through Providence and whatnot. But I think it would have to be a sweetheart deal for something that's going to move the needle in Boston to consider that.
Yeah, and of course the Islanders have a cap issue as well. Some pretty good RFAs on top of everything that's going on just philosophically between Darche And wow, well, it should be a hell of a summer here, Dregs. I know we have said that in the past, but with the cap going up here and more teams having flexibility, it's going to be an awfully fun month. Look forward to our next conversation. Thank you for this.
All right, guys. Thank you.
It's a Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
Can attest in the last 10 days or so, you get home after a tough round of golf and you're thinking, you're wayward. You're a wayward soul at that point. You want to right the ship? Bogey juice. Reach for a bogey juice. Crisp apple taste mixed with ginger, top shelf vodka. It's what you deserve as a bogey man out there on the golf course. Use the code SP15 at bogeyjuice.com. Get your Harrison Price discount and find your new drink for the spring and summer. Bogey juice at bogeyjuice.com.
Well, the BC Lions were hardly wayward Saturday night, 31-14. They beat the Edmonton Elks in the home and season opener in 2025. And they get a first victory as a CFL head coach for our next guest, former Lions quarterback, now the top boss, Mr. Buck Pierce. How you doing? Congrats, Coach.
Hey, thank you very much. We're doing well. We're doing good. Getting after it here in Surrey. Getting ready for Edmonton or Winnipeg, excuse me.
How did it feel to get your first win, Buck?
Yeah, it was, happy for the players. Obviously, we had an excellent crowd. Atmosphere was electric, and the players really fed off of that. But just exciting to see, the work that they put in, throughout training camp and the off season. It was good to get a victory at home in front of our fans. We got a lot of work to do. It felt great at the time, but we're on to Winnipeg now.
It struck me when I was watching the post-game video there from Nick Kowalski, because your preseason game was on the island. There was Buck Pierce back in the BC Lions locker room at BC Place making a speech, and there had been some speeches in there as a quarterback, Buck. What did it mean to be back in that room addressing a bunch of guys in black and orange?
Yeah, it was a little bit surreal. Every time I stepped into BC Place, whether I was, coaching from, a different team, or just, the other night, it's something special for me. The locker room is very similar to where it was when I was there as a player, and just to, feel those vibes in that locker room again, and the energy, with the group of guys that we have right now is pretty special, right? It's a good feeling. I'll look back, I'm sure months, later and everything, and really kind of, soak it in and, understand how special that was and how grateful I am for that opportunity.
I'm happy for your quarterback because I'd have to pour over the numbers. Last night's game, he had some great games last year, good games anyway. But I think the second half of this one probably was as much vintage Nathan Rourke as we have seen. And after there were, a pretty lackluster first half, there might have been some worries, but then the execution was just meticulous. And Nathan Rourke probably felt like Nathan Rourke after that game, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot a little bit in the first half. We came into halftime, and just understood where we were. We had to finish. I thought Nathan was really good, throughout the course of the game. You saw his athletic ability, take off and break tackles when he had to, and just, his accuracy and what he was seeing, I think allowed him to play, the way that he's capable of playing. Right. So, yeah, it was good. We were happy for everybody.
You can see his confidence he was battling last year as he tried to find his A+ game. And with us outwardly, he's got that I've got this, responsibility sort of, I won't say facade because it might indeed be what you see behind closed doors as well. But the flip side of that is when he does get going, it's even more lethal because the confidence is there as well as the responsibility. So you must be excited to see him in that mode.
Absolutely. I think we all are. But, he's been that way all training camp as well, just getting to know each other, getting to know how, he kind of operates and how he ticks. I think, all phases of our offense at some point, we're doing some really good things. We were able to run the ball. We were able to, mix up, certain things offensively, which ultimately, helps the quarterback, right? So, yeah, I think you saw a confident football player. I think you saw, football player in Nathan that, trusts the pieces around him. And that's ultimately what you want. So, yeah, excited for him, he's all ready to keep, that consistency going, in the next few days.
124 yards rushing, a nice return game for James Butler. Buck, just on the quarterback, how much has the offense changed from last year? How much of what you're doing is geared around Nathan and his talents?
Well, I'd say, everything's kind of geared around, who we are offensively. A big thing for me is always making sure, we're putting our pieces in, positive situations. That's not just Nathan, that's everybody. Right. So, it's geared towards, our players. So obviously, we want to, continue to put Nathan in situations that he thrives in. And what I believe is, as a play caller, helps that position, which is, a tough position to play week in and week out. So, we're going to continue to look at where we are. Whoever's on the roster that week from, multiple positions, we're going to put those guys in position to, do what they do best.
248 yards allowed. A word or two about your defense, Buck.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job. I thought they, did a good job in the back end. I thought, they were flying around, they were pursuing. I thought our tackling was really good on the perimeter as well. Trey Ford's not an easy task, right? So he's athletic. He's going to make his plays, but overall, I think they did a fantastic job.
The receiving corps has been so good year after year. It's tough to lose pieces like Alex Hollins and others, and just know that the next guys up are going to be there and be the same quality. But you guys seem to find new blood every single year. The organization has. Now it's been a change in management and coach here, but it's the same thing. Tried and true. The receiving corps seems to step up.
Yeah, and credit to those guys. We've had a lot of talent in training camp, and a lot of tough decisions. But I think the one thing is we make sure that everybody understands their role and how quickly their role can change. So we're constantly evaluating, constantly looking at who's the next guy that's going to make this opportunity, and looking at once again how can we use this certain player skill set to help us win, right? So yeah, I think our receivers coach has done a fantastic job. Our management has brought in a lot of talent, and at the end of the day, it's we're going to put players in position to make plays, and it's their jobs to go make plays.
What happened on the short yardage plays, Coach? And do you have to change anything for next week?
Yeah, we're gonna look at it for sure, and we've already addressed a couple things. But yeah, that's a major phase of CFL football. That's a game in its own. That's a scheme in its own. That's its own world. So, we're gonna make some changes, but overall wise, it's it comes down to execution.
I know you had a tough break losing David Foucault to that injury in the final preseason game. Wind up starting the 7 Canadian stars, the minimum. We've been accustomed to more at this time of year. As you know, the attrition game saw that on the other side. How do you feel about your Canadian depth right now? How did you get out of the game, most importantly?
Yeah, injury-wise, I think there's always guys, nicked up and things like that. But, for the most part, I think guys are feeling okay. We're always looking, to improve that Canadian depth and, where we are at the roster right now. And, that's always going to be moving. We do believe that we have some depth to those positions. So, we'll continue to look at that.
Do you need another body on the offensive line, period?
Well, once again, everything is on the table at this point. Obviously, we would like to, look at every scenario. But at the end of the game, at the end of the day, we're going to look at, both sides and, what's best for a football team each and every week to go win.
Short week turnaround in Winnipeg, Coach. And, of course, that's from whence you came here. Tell me, how did the Winnipeg Blue Bombers perceive the BC Lions over these last few years to the degree they did, perceive the BC Lions? Tell us about the rivalry from the Winnipeg side as you perceived it and what you got now on Thursday on the other side of the ledger.
Yeah, I mean, it was always a tough game. We knew that they BC was always explosive. They were going to play hard, and it's going to come down to, who plays, smarter, less turnovers, less penalties, and then physicality, right? So, I think when, you look at our matchups over the last few years when I was in Winnipeg, a lot of those games came down to, the fourth quarter. And we happen to play each other, multiple times, whether it, in the regular season or in the playoffs. So, good understanding of each other, but always tough games. I know going into that building, it's going to be loud. The crowd's going to be excited. It's a great, atmosphere, this early in the season for us.
Look forward to it. That is the mountain, right? Like, that's where you've got to get through Winnipeg. They've been the best in the West. Do you red circle this? Do you put emphasis on that with your players?
I really don't. I think we're gonna continue to focus on, our path and our goal and whoever, is the next opponent on the schedule. We know we had to, win games against Western opponents, whether it's at home or on the road, whoever that may be. People can look at Winnipeg and look at all the success and things like that. They're a good football team, but so are we.
And they've rope-a-doped teams before with early season scuffles, only to be contenders at the end anyhow. So you're right. It's not something you can evaluate here in the early weeks of the season, is it?
No, I mean, we understand the challenge. It's every week is a little bit different. It's no difference because it's Winnipeg. We're going on the road, and we're looking to go 1-0 this week.
Well, we look forward to the game. It was a fun time on Saturday. Thanks for the time, Buck. All the best in Manitoba.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. If you're heading to a game in downtown Vancouver, make a staycation out of it. Book your stay here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sick Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Well, we talked about it in the opening block, this extraordinary weekend of sports and particularly all the winning for local teams. Whitecaps, another improbable victory. 3-0 winners over Seattle with a secondary lineup, unbeaten in 10 MLS matches now. As we all know, there were 9 missing on international duty. The club MVP, Ryan Gauld, continues to be out with that kneecap injury. They listed 8 players as questionable with that gastrointestinal illness. Got down in Mexico on their way back from the CONCACAF Championship final last Sunday. 7 were able to start this match. Blackman, Veselinovic, Priso, Udvik, Badwal, Ocampo, Sabi. Only Isaac Boehmer, Penticton's Isaac Boehmer, the backup keeper, didn't have to start this match. Surrey's Jivan Badwal with his first goal as a cap. Daniel Rios with an impressive strike from outside the box, and Damir Krylock on a penalty as Seattle was down to 9 men due to a couple of red cards. Blake, your thoughts on the wagon that is?
We have to point out, people are going to say, but if you didn't watch the game, but there was 2 red cards. Of course they win that game. Well, they were up 1. The Badwal goal happens at 11v11. They had the halftime lead at 1-0, and the first red card for Seattle is absolutely a red card. Like that is going to be a 1v none scenario. That is what they call dogso, taking away a clear scoring opportunity. And so, full credit to them. And really the starting 11, Badwall was ironically was the one guy you'd be like, okay, that's the one question mark.
Yeah.
Everybody else, because they played guys out of position. They played Ocampo up as a winger rather than as a right back. Right. They played Utvik as a left back where he's a center back. So they got MLS players onto the pitch to start the match, albeit a little bit out of position. And Ocampo was brilliant as a winger, incidentally. So it made it work. It was just fine. And Badwall was absolutely at an MLS pitch.
We're going to hear from him. I mean, him, Utvik, Priso, they probably don't start in the best 11 scenario for the Whitecaps, but that's been the story of this year. They've had to use rotational squads because of all the CONCACAF Cup matches, and every time they've called on a player, Blake, that player has risen to the occasion, and yesterday it was the local kid from Surrey. Let's hear from him on his first goal as a Cap.
Even game-winning goal, assist, your first start here at BC Place. How does it feel to accomplish all this tonight?
Obviously, it feels amazing, man. Obviously, growing up in the academy is one main thing, but scoring a goal at BC Place and just, as a little kid, I was in those stands watching a lot. But now scoring a goal at BC Place in front of family, in front of fans, just means a lot, man. It's amazing.
Can you take us through your preparation for this game? Obviously, it's a different kind of setup to get into this game, and obviously when you found out. So can you take us through all the stages this week?
It's hard, I spent a lot of time on the toilet, I'll say that. But, coming into the game, I was just mentally prepared. Obviously, it's hard with, an illness, a lot of guys missing. But I had to step up, obviously, and all the guys had to step up, and it was obviously an amazing feeling, amazing result. So it was nice.
Thank you. Sorry about that. There was a lot of interest in Jivan after the game as a local guy. Done
By the
well,
way,
but yes.
On the toilet quip, and I don't know if this was just storytelling, exaggeration to prove the point, but somebody, I think it was Jesper, might have said that people lived in the bathroom for 24 hours. Like people literally could not leave the bathroom. Now, again, was that exaggeration or was that truth? I don't know, but it was like that's how bad this illness was.
It seems like when they released that list of players who were questionable on Saturday, that was kind of like a MLS nod. Like we may not be able to play this, or at least not with a representative lineup. And well, the Sounders arrived. The game was played, and Vancouver won going away. Now 5 points up, with a game in hand over second place San Diego and Minnesota in the West. They are at Columbus.
The only downside in the match, Matt, was they signed 7 Whitecaps 2 players as backup for this match.
Reinforcements.
And several were on the touchline ready to be subbed in at the 90-minute mark. There were 6 minutes of stoppage time put on the clock, and the referee didn't allow any of the 6 minutes to go on. He blew the whistle at 90. Generally in a blowout, you don't allow stoppage time to happen because, everybody just wants to get out of there. And down to 9 men, already down 3 goals. He blew the mercy whistle on the Seattle Sounders to get out of town. But there was kids on the touchline ready to make their pro debuts, and they were denied the opportunity. So that's the only downside.
Yeah, Saturday the Caps are at Columbus, chance to set a new franchise record of 11 MLS matches without a defeat. Then they are home a week from Wednesday against San Diego in what could be another number 1 versus number 2 battle. We've seen a couple of those already this season. So the Canadian USA players who are away for the Gold Cup, and as we know, the Caps have a lot of them, 2 Americans, 3 Canadians. We had the Gold Cup in studio today. So they will miss this match at Columbus. They will miss the match against San Diego. Then you're at LAFC on June 28th, and they're at Los Angeles. And then July 4th versus the Galaxy. We'll see how they do because the road is just starting in terms of guys being away on international duty. And, of course, I've mentioned the North Americans. You've got South Americans as well who are away. Get your tickets for that Wednesday San Diego match, a week from Wednesday here at BC Place, whitecapsfc.com. And
Tate Johnson, Kubas, Vitae, those guys can come back though, and they can play the bulk of those matches. It's just those 5 that you mentioned that are likely to be gone for 3 to 4 of those matches.
3 for 3 more for sure, right? Yeah. And maybe 4 if Canada, the United States is able to advance. Speaking of advancement, more good soccer news for Canada, and we saw their famous victory. Well, first let's talk about the victory on Saturday against Ukraine. You called it with Stephen Caldwell for TSN, and oh my God, all the Davids. They were scoring early, they were scoring often. What an amazing performance, especially early on from Jesse Marsh's side.
Well, for Jonathan David, the superlatives are gone. He's just, as I said, the hot take for the Canadian men's national team, Jonathan David's the best player on the team. Alphonso Davies, maybe he gets the most acclaim, but Jonathan David is the best player on the team. Promise David had so much anticipation. The fact that he gets a goal, he's just a poacher. Like, he's just built for scoring goals, and that's pretty cool to have because Kyle Laren's getting on a little bit. So to have another guy there to score is pretty cool. But I think the best story coming out of this is I had legitimate wonders coming off the broken leg. Would Tajon Buchanan ever be the guy that we saw in his early 20s? And Tajon,
he was the orchestrator. Oh my God, was he a great?
He was unbelievable. So it's going to be tough for both, or even one of Nelson and Ahmed, to steal a winger job. Now, Schaffelberg was fine, was not great, but he was fine. So there is some room on that side for one of the Whitecaps to maybe steal a gig. But Tajon Buchanan was something else, and that's great to see.
Fantastic to see. I would have liked to have seen the stands a little more full, Blake. I was really surprised on what looked like a really sunny, nice day in Toronto to see that many empty seats at BMO Field. I'm sitting there going, boy, if this game's in Vancouver today in the afternoon on a gorgeous Saturday, maybe fill the lower bowl of BC Place. I don't know what was up there.
One thing we've learned with soccer fans, even in Vancouver too, now I'm not saying Vancouver wouldn't have done better. They may have. But they need a long lead up. You know, the Messi game sold out like this on just a couple of weeks' notice. But even some of those other CONCACAF games, you know, when there's not a long lead up, and this tournament, I'll use the word thrown together, but, you know, there was only, a month and a half, I think, of advanced selling time. Canadian soccer fans, to get big numbers, they like to have a lot of notice. And I'm still disappointed. I agree. Like 20,000, like there's 24,000 for the Whitecaps game, and everybody knew that it was going to be the rotated squad, and there was more people there, you know. So it's disappointing on a beautiful day, but hopefully there's more for tomorrow. I
hope so. Tuesday, tomorrow against the Ivory Coast. Blake will call that game as well. In fact, PJ's in for you tomorrow. So looking forward to your call on that game, and more good soccer news for Canada. The Canadian U20 women win CONCACAF. They beat Mexico 3-2 on a goal deep into extra time. So well done to the ladies, the U20 ladies, for being continental champions here.
And the senior women's team has looked so good of late too, Matt. I think the post-Kristen Sinclair era looks okay. Like I think we're going to be okay here.
Yeah, we'll see how they do against meatier opponents. They've beaten Haiti a couple of times, but player development in soccer is coming in this country. You see it on both sides of the ledger. RBC Canadian Open turns into a pillow fight, in the words of Kiwi winner Ryan Fox, his second PGA title in 4 starts. Shout out to longtime Sir Harrison Price audience member Ambassador Paul down in New Zealand, who wanted to note his fellow Kiwi doing well on Canadian soil and in front of the Kiwi soccer team that's in Toronto for this Canadian Shield tournament at BMO. Fox and Sam Burns get it to -18, and then neither of them could hit a wedge or make a putt in the playoff. It was a little hard to watch. Fox finally hits a fairway wood in close, gets 2 putts to win it on the 4th playoff hole after Burns bombs his putt way past the hole and misses the comebacker. I'm not sure you saw this, Blake. Some criticism online about tournament organizers changing the hole location on number 18 during the playoff.
That was laid out. There was prior notification because everybody on site was very confused by this. But
everybody was very, very confused. What's going on? They're cutting a cup.
The broadcast
TV knew. TV knew. Did the players know?
I clearly not. It was written somewhere because they
TV knew, but the players didn't. I also saw a lot of criticism about the design of that hole or the tee of that hole. Many golf fans were looking in, going, "Well, you've made a par 5 finishing 18th here, but you've got the tee box so far back that it doesn't really provide a great reward option for guys going for the green in 2." And I guess until Ryan Fox hit that amazing second shot. Abbotsford's Nick Taylor, the low Canadian, at -13, tied for 13th. There were 5 Canadians in the top 27. First time at this Osprey Valley, TPC Toronto. Boy, the crowds didn't look huge either. It's a long ways from the city. I can't imagine it's easy to get to. Trying to keep an open mind and be fair here, Blake. Would like to think that they'll adopt some best practices for next year. There were several things about this tournament.
The pretty
this
holes
golf
were
course.
pretty, Matt. But like on 18, you got these beautiful pines behind the green. But then if did you see just to the left of those, like a crater of new homes are being built there, and it's just like a clear cut with like 5 monster homes. Like it looked terrible to the left. So it was this close to being very beautiful, but it wasn't in the end.
The pretty holes were pretty.
Yes.
The rest of the golf course was pretty ugly.
There
was like a lot of casual mud everywhere. There were like matted down gray areas where I'm sitting there going, did you take down a tree and not deal with the shavings? Are those supposed to be wood chips?
There was just
then so many background shots had either like porta potties or maintenance sheds or construction equipment. I don't think they dressed the set particularly well. Like it didn't look as beautiful as a normal PGA Tour stop typically looks. The golf course itself, Blake, like is it trying to be links golf? There's a ton of bunkers everywhere, but they're not really link style bunkers. You've thrown some rough up and you've got some like longer fescue. I don't know. Like I said, it's the first time there. I'm trying to keep an open mind. I'm sure they will adopt some changes and put some learnings into play when it's back at that course in a couple of years.
Have you heard if it's always going to be on the north? Because they got 3 courses there.
Well, that's the other thing. It's an enormous property, so I don't know if it's always going to be on that north course or they're going to rotate it around. But some work to do for Golf Canada, I think, in the RBC Open after our national championship makes its debut there at TPC Toronto. We mentioned this in the opening block, but Summer McIntosh swims the 400 freestyle in 3 minutes, 54 seconds, 18 tenths or hundredths at Saanich Commonwealth Place on the island in the Canadian trials. It is a new world record. She absolutely smashes it, and get used to that phrase because I think you're going to hear it more. Summer does not turn 18 or 19 years old until August. She has 4 Olympic medals, 3 gold already. She should be one of the big stars, both for Canada and internationally, at the Olympics in 2028. And those of you on the island got a chance to see her live and in person on the weekend. And boy, is she impressive. Epic French Open final with Alcaraz outlasting Sinner. He comes back from 2 sets down to win a 5th set tiebreak in 5 hours, 29 minutes. I mean, I know there have been some epic finals, including one at the Aussie Open that lasted longer than this one between Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, the big 3. But this thing stood up with just about anything those 3 guys had put together in a Grand Slam final break. How about this? Total points won 193-192 Sinner. They were separated by 1 damn point after 5.5 hours.
Which is what it felt like at the end. Yeah,
absolutely. The shot making as the fatigue was setting in the 4th and 5th set was absolutely extraordinary. You sat there wondering to yourself, where are these guys summoning this from? The ladies' final was very good too. Produced a number 1 versus number 2 in a 3-setter with Coco Gauff defeating Sabalenka, and that bodes well for that side of the bracket. But man, coming off the big 3, you now have a rivalry that hopefully endures for the next decade in tennis. 23 and 22 years old, these 2 guys. Sinner is now 3-1. That's the other thing. We were both undefeated in Grand Slam finals going into this. Yeah. Sinner's now 3-1. Alcaraz is 5-0. I mean, you are richer as a sports fan if you carved out time Sunday morning to watch that thing, because at 2-0, Blake, I was just about ready to move on and go, okay, maybe I'll run some errands here. And then Alcaraz won that third.
That's what you got to remember. It's 2-0, but it is Alcaraz, and he comes back. Incidentally,
he had never come back from 2 sets down, but yes, he is never out of it with his shot making. And
but
boy,
it was
does he have a complete
day, the anniversary of Nadal winning his 5th. So he's on pace, the exact same pace as Rafael Nadal. And incidentally, that wasn't a French Open that he won. But I think, we see more hard court events, obviously. But I think the clay lends itself to more interesting tennis, better comeback opportunities, grass to some degree too. But, generally if you're dominating, if you're up 2 sets on hard court, you're probably serving like nobody's business, and you're probably just not going to get beat that day. But I think you can come back on the other surfaces, but particularly clay. It's just more fun to watch, I think.
Some of the rallies can be extended. I can't remember seeing a men's final where the drop shot was such an important part of the strategy, both sides. And of course, that's an exciting play, because now you got a guy going full tilt at the
movement
at the net, and the gasp of the crowd. Oh, it was just brilliant television and competition yesterday from Roland Garros. And don't look now, but your Vancouver Canadians taking a run at their, quote, rightful place, as Rob Fay once called it, atop the Northwest League. They sweep the weekend series the weekend set in Tri-Cities, 6-game series, but weekend set. They have won 12 of 14 now, just 1 game back of the lead league with 9 games remaining in the first half. They are back home tomorrow to face Spokane, who are also 1 game back and chasing in the Northwest League. Take your pooch to the park tomorrow night, dog day of summer. Wednesday and Thursday night games, then a Fortis Nooner on Friday. Blue Jay Day Saturday, featuring a Davis Schneider bobblehead giveaway and appearances from Todd Stottlemyre and Pat Borders. White Spot Family Fun Sunday, where the kids run the bases postgame. Number 9, Jays prospect Cal Stevens starts tomorrow. Alas, I think we may have seen the last of Trey Savage, Blake. That number 2 Blue Jays prospect has done so well. I think he'll be bumped up to AA before long here. Get your tickets, 604-872-5232 and CanadiansBaseball.com. One more sporting note, the PWHL expansion draft goes tonight at 5:30, at which point Vancouver and Seattle will be fully stocked to the 12 players that the signing period in this expansion draft provides for them. They'll be on their own to fill out the rest of the roster, but we will have a look at what the new Vancouver PWHL franchise, the composition of the team. We'll have a full look at it, or a near full look at it later this evening. Final results of the Bogey Juice poll question from Friday. Is the Canucks dressing room drama a thing of the past? Yes or no, Blake? What did the people say?
People said no.
They said yes, but barely. 53%. Most of the comments were saying no. Van Fennock voted no. One out of the 2 guys that had a riff so great it broke the dressing room is still on the team. Coach walked away. Hughes Noyes will be around for a while. Derek says if there are still players that were on Team Miller, then the drama still lingers. And Salt and Paprika says, never boring.
Never boring.
Never boring. Never boring. It's a perfect title for Eddie's book.
Yeah.
Errors and omissions. And boy, I am such an idiot. I had no. We did that segment. We did that. Yeah, well, we did that spot on Friday about Aaron Rodgers signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I had forgotten Russell Wilson had moved on to the New York Giants and thus won't be in the same quarterback room as Aaron Rodgers. It would have been fun if they were.
That makes a lot more
so thank you to Balraj and others who correct me on that. Yes, Russell Wilson now a New York Giant, no longer a Pittsburgh Steeler. Blake missed the number and BZ4X. Yes, 4 is a number. And did you anything to self-report? Anything else from the inbox? Anything from Yerky? Yerky wasn't tweeting at me, so I imagine we're good by Yerky.
Nothing that I can see. We're all good.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky Live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. You have a good call tomorrow. We'll catch up on Wednesday and keep it local.